Now, toll free.
Joining me now from Melbourne, Liberal MP Kelly O'Dwyer, and here in the Canberra studio, Labor MP Andrew Leigh. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, David.
First to you, Andrew, on Barack Obama's win. If he can't find consensus and avoid this so-called fiscal cliff, what's that going to mean for the world and for Australia?
Well, it is a huge challenge, I think, David, getting this right. But firstly, it's just worth saying that Barack Obama has pulled off an extraordinary victory and showing, I think, three things. First of all, that if you don't properly cost your tax policy, you're not going to attract voter support. Secondly, that if you have a set of policies which are extremely hostile towards women, as Mitt Romney did, then you're going to have problems with half the electorate. And thirdly, I think that a message of optimism clearly beats a message of nastiness and negativity. And I hope that's a lesson that the House Republicans take on board as they come to do some negotiations and real negotiations before we get to the end of the year.
There's a very subtle link there with Australian politics, I'm sure, Andrew Leigh.
I hadn't thought of that until you mentioned it.
Kelly O'Dwyer, do you have confidence that Barack Obama can find a solution to this fiscal situation?
Well, look, I think we all have to have a lot of hope that he does. I think that the one thing I would agree with Andrew on is that it is critically important that they get this right, that there is cooperation between the Republicans and the Democrats. The implications are very serious, not only for the US, but for the rest of the world. The fiscal cliff that we'll be facing at the end of the year, that the US will be facing, will have broad ramifications. So it's critically important that the House and the Senate work together. We know that, of course, the House is still dominated by the Republicans and the Senate is dominated by the Democrats. So they are going to have to compromise. Otherwise, we are going to see, I think, a very difficult period.
OK, issues closer to home. Andrew Leigh, today the Resources Minister and Energy Minister Martin Ferguson will release the white paper on energy. He's hoping to suggest a few ways to bring down power bills.
Yes.
What's the government looking at here?
Well, David, we know quite clearly that the main driver of power bills hasn't been a price on carbon pollution. It's been over-investment in poles, wire and infrastructure. And we have this kind of odd situation where a quarter of your, my and your viewers' power bills are going to support infrastructure that's only used 2 days a year. So a quarter of your bill going on infrastructure used 2 days a year means that we need to find smarter ways of, for example, turning off unnecessary appliances, using smart meters, trying to make sure that we don't overspend on the infrastructure. It'll mean working with states as well, but I've been really
confident that you can get that support from the states?
Well, I was really pleased this morning to hear Ian Macfarlane, the Coalition's spokesperson, speaking very sensibly and positively about this challenge. I think Martin Ferguson and Ian Macfarlane together can do a lot to bring a consensus right across the states and the federal government.
Kelly O'Dwyer, the carbon tax, as Andrew pointed out there, is just a fraction of the cost increases that we've seen over the past few years. It has been a lot of the cost increase in the last few months, but not the last few years. So apart from scrapping the carbon tax, what would the Coalition do to bring down power bills?
Well, I love Andrew's suggestion, which is we have to turn off appliances, that's actually setting our electricity prices skyrocketing. I mean, frankly, let's get real on this and let's look at some of the facts. The ABS released statistics for the July quarter, 1st of July. It said electricity prices in Australia have actually gone up by over 15%, 15.3%, largely due to the carbon tax. Now, I know the government is going to want to point to the fact that, you know, we should have less investment in poles and wires. This is something that they are clinging to like a bit of a fig leaf. But if they are really serious in their energy and resources paper today, if they're serious about policy and not about the politics, then they'll get a bit real about the impact that the carbon tax is having on business and is having on households. They'll also get real about the impact that the mining tax is having on adding additional regulatory burden to to business as well, and the impact it has on investment confidence in Australia. Let's be honest about the fact that our mining and resources sector is critical to our country, critical to growth, critical to Australia's competitiveness.
But do you think, Kelly O'Dwyer, that smart meters? Do you think that smart meters and perhaps the scrapping of the way prices are regulated by state-based authorities at the moment and opening up that area to competition across the nation, are they ideas that the Coalition would support?
Well, of course, in Victoria, I mean, Jeff Kennett deregulated the electricity market when he was Premier, all those years ago. That's something that he delivered. He didn't just talk about it, he delivered it. You had the Labor government in New South Wales, in government for over 11 years. They didn't deregulate the electricity market now, and all of a sudden this is something that the federal Labor government has decided to focus on. 5 years, of course, into their government, they've decided to make this an issue. One can only, query just how real it is, how serious they are about it, or whether it's simply more talk.
Okay, well, just on, we've only got a few minutes left. I know you want a response, but I've got to move on to Treasury costings, because Martin Parkinson has written back to Joe Hockey on the Treasury costings of Coalition policies this week, saying that there's been no breach of the professional and apolitical ethos of the Treasury. He also points out that it's long been the case that Treasury is periodically asked by government of the day to cost or analyse alternative policies. So, Kelly O'Dwyer, what was Joe Hockey on about this week when he said that the Treasury had been politicised and compromised?
Well, just that it is quite extraordinary for a government to be using a department to cost policies, release those policies selectively.
Martin Parkinson says it's not extraordinary,
not cost them in full, not talk about the benefits, but to very selectively cost aspects of government policies. I mean, in situations in the past, you would certainly see potential alternative policies that the government may consider being costed, but you don't ever see a situation that we have seen just now where the government has specifically gone out, deliberately gone to Treasury, put them in a terrible situation where they have said to them, we want you to cost only aspects of the policy, and even then, one queries what parameters were around all of that, and then selectively release it to a journalist of their choice.
And
this is at a time when they refused to... Can I just finish one point? This is at a time when they refused to release the Greens costings that apparently have been done. They're fought tooth and nail to protect
just going to ask Andrew Leigh about that. Why hasn't Treasury released the Greens policies? And not even all the government's policies have been costed. So is this a bit rich from the government, this criticism?
Well, David, if you think you have good ideas, you ought to be pleased when the Treasury goes out and costs them. That's something that Treasuries have done with ideas coming from the other side of the political fence, with ideas coming from interest groups and think tanks. Certainly, if we go back to 2004, Peter Costello not only had Labor Party policies around superannuation and the baby bonus costed, but even released the internal Treasury working papers, stapled them to his press release. And this is work that the Treasury does to analyse all of the options. I'd like to see the Coalition, if they believe these costings are wrong, getting their own policies properly costed. We now have a Parliamentary Budget Office. Kelly sat on the report that recommended that the Coalition back it, but then as they discovered that they had such a big gap between what the promises they'd made and the taxes they were going to get rid of, the Coalition decided they had to retreat back into this war behind this opaque wall. But Mitt Romney's just shown the danger of that. If you don't show your costings to the people, then they're not going to trust you. They need to see properly costed policies, and that's what we're seeing with this analysis.
Kelly O'Dwyer, I know you want to make a response to that. I'm really sorry, we're out of time, so we'll hopefully get your thoughts on that next time. But we do really appreciate your thoughts this morning. Same to you, Andrew Leigh. Thanks very much for watching AM Agenda, the latest news headlines and all the latest from the United States with David Spears coming up right after this.